Scipio versus Hannibal, Rome's savage comeback. What happens when the greatest military genius of his time meets a revenge-fueled prodigy with nothing to lose? 216 BC. Rome suffers its worst defeat in history. The battlefield at Cannae becomes a graveyard for 50,000 Roman soldiers. And in the middle of this carnage, a teenage tribune named Scipio the Younger escapes death, swearing vengeance on the man who orchestrated it all, Hannibal Barca. But how does a traumatized survivor become the architect of Rome's greatest comeback? Why did Hannibal, the man who danced circles around Roman armies for 15 years, suddenly lose everything in a single battle? And what was inside that fig that made the Roman Senate scream, "Carthage must be destroyed"? This is not just a story of war. It's a saga of betrayal, redemption, and the terrifying realization that even empires have expiration dates. From the scorched fields of Spain to the burning streets of Carthage, follow the rise of Scipio Africanus, the man who rewrote Rome's fate with fire, fury, and a tactical sandwich. Because when history throws elephants, mercenaries, and poisoned rings into the mix, you know it's going to be epic. Before we dive into this wild tale of betrayal, redemption, and tactical brilliance, make sure to follow us, subscribe, and click that notification bell so you never miss a single twist in the saga. From battlefield brilliance to fig-fueled paranoia, we've got stories that will blow your toga off. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's travel back to the blood-soaked fields of Cannae, where Rome's darkest hour gave birth to its greatest hero. It was a beautiful day for a massacre. Rome had just fielded the largest army in its history, 80,000 strong. They were confident, cocky even. After all, they outnumbered Hannibal 2-1. What could possibly go wrong? Enter Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian general who had crossed the Alps with elephants like it was a casual hike. At the Battle of Cannae, he pulled off a military flex so legendary it's still taught in war colleges today. He let the Romans charge into his center, then enveloped them from all sides like a tactical burrito. Result, a bloodbath. Nearly 50,000 Romans died. Amid the chaos, a young tribune named Publius Cornelius Scipio, who we'll call Scipio the Younger, refused to die like a side character. He slashed his way out of the encirclement with a handful of survivors and galloped toward Canusium, probably screaming, "Nope, nope, nope," the whole way. That night, the mood in camp was darker than a Roman senator's toga. Soldiers whispered about fleeing Italy, maybe getting a gig under some foreign king. Scipio, still covered in blood and trauma, stood up and went full gladiator mode. "You are all worse than cowards, traitors to Rome. Swear loyalty to the Republic now, or I'll kill you myself." "Okay, Scipio, chill. But also, respect." Hannibal, meanwhile, was 5 days from Rome, but instead of storming the city, he sent a messenger to negotiate peace. Rome responded like a stubborn toddler. "No, also, we're not listening. Also, we're passing a law that says we can't pay you for our prisoners." Hannibal, "I will start killing them." Rome plugs ears and hums loudly. Eventually, Hannibal sold the hostages into slavery. Cities across Italy rebelled and joined him. If he were fighting literally any other nation, he'd have won. But Rome didn't hear no bell. Rome dusted off the Fabian strategy, basically, run away and annoy the enemy. Hannibal couldn't be everywhere at once, and Rome started attacking Carthaginian holdings in Spain. Enter Scipio the Elder and his brother Gnaeus, who tag-teamed Iberia like it was a wrestling match. They won big at the Battle of Apulia, flipping the region and recapturing Saguntum, the city that started it all. Carthage panicked and sent Hannibal's brothers, Mago and Hasdrubal, and a general named Hazer Bulgiso. Yes, his name sounds like a Carthaginian name generator glitched. The Scipio brothers recruited 20,000 Iberian mercenaries, but Hasdrubal knew mercenaries only loved one thing: gold. He bribed them to ghost the Romans mid-battle. Scipio the Elder was surrounded and killed. Gnaeus tried to escape but was hunted down and also killed. Rome lost Spain. Hasdrubal began prepping to cross the Alps and join Hannibal. Things were looking grim. Back in Rome, Scipio the Younger was devastated. His father and uncle were dead. The Senate asked for volunteers to retake Spain. Only one hand went up. "Scipio, I'm 24. I don't meet the age requirement, but I don't care. I'm going." The Senate, "We literally have no one else. Fine, you're proconsul now." Scipio wasn't in it for glory. He was in it for revenge. The Barcas had messed with the wrong Roman. Scipio didn't just grow up in Rome, he grew up in war. His childhood was a montage of spears, strategy scrolls, and the sound of senators screaming about Carthage. He rescued his father at the Battle of Ticinus, survived the horror of Cannae, and watched Rome get humiliated by Hannibal like a gladiator losing to a toddler. But Scipio wasn't here to cry. He was here to adapt. If we keep fighting like Romans, we'll keep dying like Romans. Time to fight like Africans. In 210 BC, Scipio arrived in Spain with a plan so bold it made the Senate clutch their togas. He spent the winter drilling his army in experimental formations, think Roman legions doing synchronized swimming but with swords. By spring 209 BC, he was ready to strike. While Hasdrubal and Gisco were busy playing whack-a-rebellion in western Spain, Scipio marched straight to New Carthage, the jewel of Carthaginian Spain. Surrounded by water on three sides, it was considered unconquerable. Scipio, hold my amphora. He took it in one day. Then, in a PR move worthy of modern spin doctors, he freed the hostages Carthage had been using to keep the local tribes in check. Suddenly, Scipio wasn't just a general, he was a liberator. Spanish tribes flocked to his banner like it was Coachella, and he was headlining. Next year, Scipio faced Hasdrubal on a hill so steep it made goats nervous. Hasdrubal placed skirmishers on the first plateau and heavy infantry on the second. Scipio's men charged uphill, getting pelted with javelins and rocks like it was ancient dodgeball. But while Hasdrubal was busy watching the chaos, Scipio pulled a classic "now you see me, now you're surrounded" move. He sent half his army up the left flank and the rest with General Laelius up the right. Hasdrubal, thinking he had the Romans cornered, deployed his main force, only to get Scipio sandwiched from both sides. The Carthaginians panicked. Hasdrubal retreated. Scipio looted the camp like it was Black Friday. Carthage, now sweating bullets, ordered Hasdrubal to cross the Alps and join Hannibal in Italy. He took 30,000 men and retraced his brother's legendary route. But unlike Hannibal, Hasdrubal sent a messenger ahead. Oops. The Romans intercepted the message, knew exactly where he was going, and ambushed him near the Metaurus River. Hasdrubal's army was obliterated. In a final act of defiance, he led a suicidal charge into the Roman front line. Days later, Roman soldiers rode to Hannibal's camp and casually tossed Hasdrubal's severed head over the wall. Hannibal stares at his brother's lifeless face. There lies the fate of Carthage. By 206 BC, Carthage was hanging on by a thread in Spain. Mago and Gisco combined forces, fielding 74,000 men to crush Scipio once and for all. Scipio, perfect, let's dance. At Ilipa, Scipio lined up his troops in the standard Roman formation for several days, lulling the Carthaginians into a false sense of routine. Then, on the final morning, he flipped the script. Roman heavy infantry now faced Carthage's weakest Iberian allies. Velites were placed opposite the war elephants. Roman Spanish allies faced Carthage's strongest African infantry. The Carthaginians didn't have time to rearrange. Scipio's men stretched their line, enveloped the Iberians, and sent the elephants into a panic with trumpet blasts and javelins. The beasts trampled their own troops. Gisco's wings collapsed. Scipio's cavalry and infantry closed in. Result, 48,000 Carthaginians dead. Spain was now Roman. Scipio returned to Rome in 215 BC like a rock star on a victory tour. He was only 30, technically too young to be consul, but the people didn't care. They elected him in a landslide. Even King Massinissa of Numidia, who had fought alongside the Barcas, switched sides. For the first time, Rome had elite Numidian cavalry. The Senate asked Scipio what he planned to do as consul. Scipio, I'm going to Africa. Senators, wait, what? No, Fabius Maximus says we should keep doing nothing. It's working. Scipio, Fabius can keep playing hide and seek. I'm ending this war. They gave him command of Sicily, hoping he'd stay put. Spoiler, he didn't. As Hannibal's elite veterans began to push back the exhausted Roman line, Scipio stood at the edge of despair. His men, those disgraced survivors of Cannae who had clawed their way back from shame, were faltering. The battlefield was a cacophony of clashing steel, war cries, and the haunting echo of history repeating itself. But then, the dust cloud. Scipio's eyes lit up like a Roman candle. Massinissa, the Numidian prince turned Roman ally, was thundering back onto the battlefield with his cavalry, fresh, furious, and fast. The Carthaginian veterans turned their heads just in time to see a wall of hooves and spears barreling toward them. Surprise, it's me again. Massinissa, probably. The Numidian cavalry smashed into Hannibal's rear line like divine retribution. The Carthaginians, already locked in brutal combat, were now surrounded. Scipio gave the signal, and the Roman line surged forward with renewed fury. This wasn't just a battle, it was a reckoning. On one side, Hannibal's undefeated veterans, hardened by 15 years of war, the last hope of a crumbling empire. On the other, the survivors of Cannae, once branded cowards, now fighting for redemption with every ounce of rage and pride they had left. The clash was savage. Shields splintered, swords shattered, and the ground turned red. But the Romans, fueled by vengeance and the promise of honor restored, refused to break. Hannibal watched as his veterans began to fall. One by one, the warriors who had followed him across mountains and through victories collapsed under the relentless Roman assault. The battlefield at Zama was already a blood-soaked chessboard. Hannibal's elite veterans were pushing the Romans back, inch by inch, like a slow-motion avalanche of doom. But then, thunder. Not from the sky, but from the hooves of Massinissa's cavalry, returning like a divine plot twist. Before Hannibal could say, "Oh no," they were crashing into the back of his line, like a surprise party hosted by death itself. He had always feared this moment. He needed to finish off the Romans before their cavalry returned. But now, time had betrayed him. The Carthaginian line collapsed like a house of papyrus. 20,000 men died. 20,000 more were taken prisoner. Hannibal barely escaped, probably sprinting faster than any war elephant ever had. The survivors of Cannae, those poor souls who had lived as walking shame for 14 years, stood victorious. They wept, not from grief, but from the overwhelming release of redemption. They were no longer cowards. They were Roman warriors, and they had helped to defeat the greatest general of their age. Carthage sued for peace. Rome, ever the sore winner, made sure it stung. Carthage's territory was reduced to a postage stamp around the city. They were forbidden from waging war outside Africa. They had to ask Rome for permission to even sneeze aggressively. All warships were destroyed in full view of their citizens, like a public breakup. And they had to pay reparations for 50 years. Because nothing says, "You lost," like a half-century of monthly bills. Scipio returned to Rome like a victorious gladiator. He was given the title Africanus, because Scipio, the guy who beat Hannibal, was too long for coin inscriptions. With Carthage neutered, Rome became the Mediterranean's lone superpower. Their army, now full of hardened veterans, steamrolled Macedonia and Greece like they were warm-up acts. Hannibal tried politics. Bad idea. He pushed anti-corruption laws, which made him about as popular as a tax audit. Chased out of Carthage, he spent his final years dodging Roman spies like a Mediterranean Jason Bourne. In 883 BC, cornered near the Black Sea, he opened a secret compartment in his ring, pulled out poison, and said, "Let us ease the Romans of their continual dread and care, who think it long and tedious to await the death of a hated old man." He drank, he died. And the Romans finally stopped checking under their beds for Hannibal. That same year, Scipio Africanus also died, in exile, bitter and betrayed by jealous senators. His tomb read, "Ungrateful fatherland, you will not even have my bones." Despite Rome's best efforts to bury Carthage in debt, the Carthaginians did what they did best, make money. Within 10 years, they were rich again and offered to pay off the reparations early. Rome? No, the point was to suffer. Carthage? Okay, we'll suffer, efficiently. They paid off the debt in 151 BC like it was a gym membership. In 153 BC, Roman Senator Cato the Elder visited Carthage, expecting ruins. Instead, he found wealth, vibrancy, and figs the size of his ego. He returned to Rome, dropped a fig from his toga mid-speech, and declared, "This fig came from but 3 days away." Translation: Carthage is rich, close, and terrifying. From that day on, he ended every speech with, "Carthage must be destroyed." When Carthage asked Rome to mediate Numidian encroachments, Rome ghosted them. Eventually, Carthage declared war on Numidia in self-defense, violating the peace treaty. Rome gotcha. They demanded 300 noble children as punishment. Carthage begged for guarantees. Rome offered none. Mothers screamed, clung to soldiers, jumped into the sea. It was heartbreak on an epic scale. Then Rome demanded all weapons. Carthage surrendered 200,000 pieces of armor and every catapult. Then Rome said, "Now abandon your city and move 10 miles inland." Carthage? Wait, what? Rome? We meant the people of Carthage, not the city. You broke the treaty. Carthage realized they'd been played. The ambassadors cried out to the gods. The Senate erupted. Citizens stormed the chamber. Senators were killed. Ambassadors were stoned. With nothing left to lose, Carthage declared war. Slaves were freed to fight. Women shaved their heads to make ropes. The city became a forge of desperation. In 149 BC, Rome laid siege. Carthage held out for 2 years. Then in 147 BC, a new consul arrived, Scipio Aemilianus, adopted son of Africanus. Within a year, he broke through. He ordered total destruction. Of 400,000 inhabitants, only 50,000 survived, and they were sold into slavery. Rome burned the city. From a distance, Scipio stood with historian Polybius. Polybius congratulated him, but Scipio wept. A glorious moment, Polybius, but I have a dread foreboding that someday the same doom will be pronounced upon my own country. He quoted Hector from the Iliad. A day will come when sacred Troy shall perish. Carthage was gone. Rome stood alone. But Scipio knew. Nothing lasts forever. Empires rise, empires fall, and someday, even mighty Rome would be just another fig dropped from history's toga. If you love epic tales of ancient warfare, betrayal, redemption, and tactical brilliance, then you're in the right place. But don't just watch. Join the Legion. Follow us, subscribe, and smash that notification bell so you never miss a single twist in history's most jaw-dropping stories. From Scipio's savage comeback to Hannibal's final stand, we've got more drama than a Roman Senate session.